So welcome to panel discussion number 2 from a partnership of Power Dance UK, Chronic Warriors and Birmingham Wheelchair Basketball. It's a pleasure to see everybody, and it's great to start a panel discussion. This time the topic is grassroots inclusion sport. So I'm going to go through the panel and let them introduce themselves and possibly tell a story about themselves and how they got into sport. So Lee, over to you.
I'm Lee, and I play for Warwickshire Bears Wheelchair Basketball. My sporting history started off with athletics from an early age, and then it sort of petered out a bit. There wasn't a lot at school, and then I got chased down by Tom, who asked me to come and try basketball, and that's how I got into basketball and been there ever since.
Fantastic. As I say, it's a great story and it's a good start for this panel discussion. And so Amy at the moment. And so Amy, over to you.
Yeah. So I also, like Lee, played for Warwickshire Bears Wheelchair Basketball Academy. I was very, very late into wheelchair basketball. I was quite heavily into sports before my injury, but then obviously suffered my injury, and there wasn't an awful lot around with regard to disability sports. I did sort of get into wheelchair basketball in a local club, but it was a very, very small club, and there weren't sort of the opportunities there with regard to coaching and developing. So was approached by a friend of mine who was already at the club in Warwickshire and said, come along and give it a go, and the rest's history.
Fantastic. Katie, back to you. Sorry, we lost you there because you froze out. So Katie, if you introduce yourself, please.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm Katie and I'm Power Dance National Representative. And I first got involved with Power Dance UK in 2016 when I joined a local wheelchair dance group in Whitney. And ever since then, I haven't looked back. I've entered a few national competitions. Yeah.
Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Roxanne.
Hello there, I'm Roxanne. I'm from Chronic Warriors UK. I'm an adapted boxer and I'm also their mental health mentor. In regards to my journey with inclusion sport, I started from a very young age, leaving school with at least 10 gold medals and a national record. So I felt like it was a good time to go to college and do sport because I thought there was a need for para coaches. Unfortunately, back in 2006, that wasn't the case. So I ended up going into financial services. I found Chronic Warriors during COVID, and so I've started my inclusion sport journey once again.
Fantastic. Thanks, Roxanne. Tom.
Yeah, so my name's Tom Masterson. As you can see, I'm not very good with all this IT stuff, so I mean, please bear with me. I've been in the chair now for nearly, I think, about 35 years now. Before my accident, I used to play a lot of sport, football and rugby as such. And then after my accident, I seen somebody at the hospital I was at who played wheelchair basketball, and they took me into going to a session. And then since then, I went to my first session, and since then I fell in love with the sport.
Thanks, Tom. That's brilliant. And Patrick.
Yes, my name is Patrick McGeough. I'm Chief Exec of Power Dance UK and one of the partners of this great project. I'm probably the most unfittest next to Andy on that. But in terms of physical getting involved, I wouldn't class myself as a professional dancer. I got involved in dance more for the fact of wanting to do something for a wedding dance. Found that when I did it, I really enjoyed it. And similar to Katie, started doing it. I haven't looked back since. I don't think I'm going to be the next Anton Dubeck or Kevin Clifton, but I'm getting there one wheel at a time.
Thanks, Patrick. And obviously, I'm Andy Credit from Birmingham Wheelchair Basketball. We've been doing this partnership now together for the last couple of months, and it's something that has been passionate for me in regards to lockdown. And we've as a group also are bringing people together for the last 18 months. We've done inspirational interviews. We've over 70 now. We're from different sports, different clubs, different organisations, and all across the world, which is a fantastic for us. And meeting you guys is an absolute pleasure. Going on to grassroots inclusion sport, and the question is not on my list at the moment, so I will just put it out there, and it's an open floor. So thinking about how you got into inclusion sport or disability sport or sport in general, how did you research that from where you was at the beginning of your journey? How did you do all the research and then make that decision? Said, you know what, I'm just going to go and have a go at it. Does anybody want to answer? Go on then.
I think for me, it was more just sort of through word of mouth. It was, I've got a friend that I knew played basketball, didn't know where, I didn't really know an awful lot about sport. I sort of ventured along to my very first session before I came to Warwickshire Bears, and there wasn't a lot there to sort of encourage me and make me want to look at, learning how to play this sport properly. It was kind of, I felt like, because the way the classification system works within wheelchair basketball, because I was a female, I was generally put into a game situation, into the league, because I was a female, meaning that they could play a much stronger, a male-dominated lineup. The time was, an effort was never sort of invested. So I kind of was on the verge of sort of losing interest if it wasn't for this little lifeline from this friend of mine who actually sort of came down to do some little bits of chair skills. I'm used to pushing a day chair, but trying to push a wheelchair basketball chair, you've certainly compacted in, trying to, move the chair, push with any kind of speed, stop, catch a ball, bounce a ball, do anything with a ball. It's just an absolute, it's just really overwhelming. So for me, it was just sort of, it's come along, hold my hand kind of thing, come and have a look at Warwickshire. And it was just from there, just welcomed in. There was sort of one-on-one bits and pieces. Nobody expected the world from you, and everybody wanted to put that time in and actually teach you the bare bones, the basics of the game, how to push that chair properly and handle a ball without, it's shooting off all over the place. So it was just having those open conversations with people.
Thanks, Amy. Roxanne, how about you?
I feel like, compared to most people that I speak to in Chronic, I'm in quite a privileged position. I've had my disability from birth, so I went to a disabled school that had a major focus on sport. So in regards to research and stuff, absolutely not, which meant when I got to 16 and thought sport would be a good idea to continue, I felt like the floor was taken from underneath me. So I had an opposite way round. I am very grateful for obviously my school being able to provide that for me, and I am very aware that kids that are actually integrated into mainstream schools are let down in that way, and that's why I initially trained for what I did. Unfortunately, as I said, I think I did it 10 years too early, but hopefully here we can do some bits about that.
Thanks, Roxanne, that's brilliant. What about yourself, Patrick?
I think for me, it was probably similar to Tom and yourself, Andy, in the respect of that I've probably been using my chair now for nearly coming up to over 20 odd years. And at the time, you're talking back in the early 90s, the way of disability and support services it just wasn't available at the time. There was pockets of information, not like there is now, where you can go to a disability service, you can go to access online and just type in wheelchair basketball, wheelchair dance, wheelchair boxing. I take Roxanne's point in the respects of that there's still miscommunications going on because the person still has to do a lot of digging. But I feel that there has been a lot of improvements over the years in grassroots, and there's been a lot more work. We've still got a long way to go, but it's definitely an improvement than what I had, which was very much literally relying on the occupational therapist, physiotherapist to tell me what would be available.
Thanks, Patrick. Katie?
Hi. Well, I don't want to talk for ages, so I'll try and cut it short, but I'm similar to Roxanne. I've had my disability from birth, and I went to a special needs school, and they focused on disability sports and performing arts. And I loved performing arts from an early age. I, was in loads of productions at school. And as an adult, I met Paddy at a specialist gym at Oxford, and he was doing a taster session for Paradance UK. And I thought, this is good. I like this. And then I sort of had it in the back of my mind. Then mutual friends that were also going to the gym started going to this wheelchair dance group in of Paradance in the forefront of people's minds.
Thanks, Katie. Tom?
What was the question again?
The question was, Tom, obviously thinking about when it all started and thinking about how you got into disability sport or sport in general yourself. How did you go about to find that research to go out and try the sport, and and how did that become, obviously for you, a kind of a learning curve as well in some respects?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier on, my getting into wheelchair basketball started when I was at the hospital. I was out when I had my spinal injury, so I was very, very lucky that I had somebody there who actually played wheelchair basketball, and they getting talking to them, they invited me along to do a session, and then like I say, I fell in love with it. So I kind of like fell into it. But at the time, again, like the girls were saying, there was not many, there wasn't much out there, like trying to entice people into sport. It was kind of, you had to go out and find it yourself.
Mm.
So, unless you were in a situation where I was, you know what I mean? There was nothing there. And also, like say with wheelchair basketball, it's never been the best at like going out into the communities and trying to recruit new people. It's only just started at the moment. So hence why over the 30 years, I've always had to do this thing where I've gone and seen somebody with a disability, just go and chase them down and have a talk to them and try and persuade them to come and join the club.
So let me get this straight, Tom, right? Because obviously I get in trouble for this as well, to be fair. If you see somebody in the supermarket in a wheelchair or on crutches, you go up and say to them, do you fancy playing wheelchair basketball? Because actually I do that as well.
Well, the way I look at it, like we're saying with Lee, now, Lee's a typical person, is a good point to make. Is that if I never went up to Lee and said to him, do you fancy coming along? Lee would have joined the club and had, and been where he is now. And there's been lots of people, in the club who have been like that, who I've met, and, 9 times out of 10, you'll get the usual, oh no, I'm not interested. And you just turn around and say, well, thanks for your time, and you go off. But all you got to do is just find that one person every now and again, and that makes it worthwhile.
So Lee, is that what happened then? Tom came up to you. Can you explain that one?
Tom I was in Solihull High Street, and he'd literally just come up to me. I was there meeting friends outside the shopping centre there, and he just come up and literally said, have you ever played sport or been interested in joining a club sort of thing? We do wheelchair basketball, and just said where they train, said come along, give it a go. And so I took that chance, went down, and I literally haven't looked back since. I've been there 15 odd years or so now, sort of thing. My sporting journey was quite sort of different up to that point. As I've been in a chair for about 39 years now. I was 6 when I first had my accident, and then I got involved with athletics through a school. Just sort of come along and said, oh, do you want to come along and try this sports club out? And I started doing sort of swimming, different aspects of sport. And one of the teachers there, he took me on, and we started training, and I started doing athletics. I started doing sprinting, 100-metre sprint. and a couple of other track events sort of things. So he stuck with me, but then he got a promotion and he left the school, and sort of then I got stuck in a sort of void, whereas I'd sort of been doing some sports, but then there was nowhere else to go, no one else to speak to. And so up until doing basketball, then I'd sort of been left out of getting involved in any sort of sport or knowing where to go. And there wasn't internet or mobile phone or anything then, or it was a lot harder to find out all of this stuff that you can now.
It's interesting you say that, because obviously, you know, I've been involved in schools and disability sport for nearly 30 years. And, you know, and if it wasn't to, as you say, a particular person that actually takes an interest and supports you passionately to get people on board to play sport. And I always go back to when I was working at supporting an organisation at the Children's Hospital in Birmingham to do wheelchair basketball and other multi-sports as well. And I always have this kind of running joke with Warwickshire Cricket Board, and they were there as well doing cricket, inclusive cricket. And it always comes to the point of saying, you're here again, because obviously it's the same people doing the same thing all the time. But this is really interesting, because obviously Carling, looking at, you know, over 25s, and, you know, you get to a certain point in your life regards to a certain age where all of a sudden that support is taken away, and we end up like me and Tom seeing somebody in the supermarket and going up to, do you fancy playing sport? Do you agree with that, Patrick?
Oh, definitely. It's the amazing amount of times that you like you and Tom, you go up to people and it's like, oh, have you thought about doing this? And it's quite interesting to see the difference, listening to like Roxanne and Katie, different elements of physical activity and sport, but the same issue of, you go through, if you're in an SEN school, that support program, once that bubble bursts, for a better word, and you do move into adulthood, you then have that issue. And it's quite interesting, like Lee said, that whole concept of that transition, because then, like for someone like myself, I was able-bodied, for a better word. I got my disability when I was in my teenage years, and the difficulty I had was I was in that halfway house point. I was leaving childhood, and but I was still classed as a child under the disability bits. So in one point they were offering me stuff on one hand, and the next they were going, well, no, sorry, you're too old now, you can't access this. So I think there is this correlation around your age and your support and that development of it going forward. And I think it's an interesting one, maybe one for another panel around schools and education later on, but I digress. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity around that transition.
Thanks, Patrick. I mean, moving on to our next question, we talk about, you know, the benefits from inclusion sport. What would you going to wheelchair basketball, and this is open to Tom, Amy and Lee, what are the benefits, you know, that you have found in wheelchair basketball?
I think from a personal perspective, the socialisation aspect, the independent side of it, that I'm doing something for me. No one's going to force me to go. No one's going to make me play. It's my own sort of mindset, my own drive. And I've kind of found with that a greater sense of belonging. I don't feel that, to an extent, when I guess I first acquired my disability, my confidence was shot, which I'm sure people can relate to on varying levels and at varying scales. And there's kind of, to me, it felt a perception that I shouldn't be seen out in public. I shouldn't be going out to do basic things like going shopping or going to college as I was, or, you know, certainly not going to the pub with my college mates and stuff after we'd finished, kind of thing like that. And it kind of, by moving into wheelchair basketball, made me realise that actually, yes, I can be seen out in society and I can be doing things. And it's helping, it's giving me the confidence to challenge those misconceptions where people are, you know, they're shocked that you're out in society, but they see you getting in and out of your car and it's like, whoa, hang on, you can drive. Yeah, but I've also got a mortgage. I've got a mortgage, I've got a house, I've got, you know, kids. I haven't got kids, but you know, it sort of then makes them start questioning, actually, you're not that different to able-bodied people, you know, that don't have these challenges, kind of things. So for me, it was sort of like an epiphany. It gave me the confidence to start going out and living my life, but gave me a voice to start challenging people's conceptions of what they thought a disabled person was and what we should and shouldn't be allowed to do in society. And there's still stuff now that, you know, we shouldn't, older people, well, they shouldn't be allowed to go to the post office during the week, or shouldn't be allowed to go to the bank because they're too slow, or they shouldn't be able to go to the supermarkets, that it should be restricted, that disabled people can only go out, you know, certain days of the week sometimes. And it's just nuts, absolutely nuts. But it needs more than one voice. So I think the more people that we can keep attracting into inclusive sports and things, we're just widening the circle. And it encourages mass participation on like a global scale. Everybody, whether you want to have fun, you know, come and play just because you want to have fun, or you want to get into it competitively, it just opens conversations and it opens doors to everybody. It's brilliant.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Amy.
I went off on a tangent then. Sorry, Andy.
That's fine. Don't worry. That's fine. Roxanne, what about Chronic Warriors and how you got in? Obviously, benefits to you from playing the sport you're in.
I mean, a lot of what Amy said, you know, I resonate with and understand, you know, completely. And as I say, I was shielding when I found Chronic Warriors. I absolutely found Chronic Warriors by accident. I didn't even think Louise was going to get me to turn the camera on. So I wasn't even like properly dressed or anything. I looked like a complete nightmare. And I didn't even realise it was boxing at the time. I thought it was just assisted fitness. I was like, oh, wait, I'm not meant to be here. Like, this isn't my space. But one thing I feel personally it gives me, other than community, mental health, things like that, with the model of disability that we unfortunately still live in, we look a lot at deficit. So when we're filling out those PIP forms, when we're asking social services for care support, we constantly have to say, I can't. And actually, having adaptive sport, and particularly adaptive boxing, you'll say, okay, but how can we do this? And I think that is amazing. It's even if it's just an hour of I can, that's an hour that people wouldn't have before. And the only thing that worries me is I know that a lot of people are saying, well, I can't celebrate the things I can do because I'm worried someone's going to see it and presume that I shouldn't be getting all this other support. So I think there is a level of education needed on how sport works with functionality. But the fact I can throw a left hook doesn't mean I can make a cup of tea. And I think that is also really important to make sure that people will engage with sport without fear of extra support being taken away.
Thanks, Roxanne. That's very true. Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, I'm very interested in the comments, and it's really nice. Well, I don't think nice is the correct word, but it's really reassuring that I'm not the only one who, because I agree with Amy and Roxanne, that I think on a personal level, I joined wheelchair dance because I love performing, and I want all the way along through all my life, I've tried to focus on what I can do rather than what I can't. But I think it's a bigger picture in terms of society. Just being out there in whatever sport you do, boxing, wheelchair basketball, just being out there and showing people that you can do it. Regardless of being able-bodied or disabled, we can all have a common ground and we can all enjoy sport. And I guess sport is the common ground.
Thanks, Katie. That's lovely. Patrick, Tom, Lee, do you want to add anything to that as well, regarding in respect of your sports?
With me, I think one of the biggest issues I found was school. I ended up wasting a lot of my time at school during PE lessons because there was nothing for me to do. I literally used to sit on the side and watched my classmates play sport, and they found that acceptable. And I know Tom has done a lot of work trying to get into schools or trying to get recognition that the sports clubs out there. And I just don't think schools are that interested in trying to push it out there. Even if we can't go and do taster sessions and stuff in a school and introduce sports, they could at least signpost where you could go outside. And I still now think that's an issue. And I mean, I was at school a long time ago now, and I don't think much has changed since.
Thanks, Lee. Tom, you were just going to say something there, Tom?
Yeah, well, for me, the biggest thing for playing a team sport or doing a sport as well has been I've learned more about how to live with my disability from being with people who have disabilities. So if any problem I've got, you know what I mean, there's either somebody in the club who's either been through it and done it and knows how to sort it out, or knows somebody who's been through it, done it, and knows how to sort it out. So, you know, any problems you come across, you've always got that support with all the members of the club as well, you know what I mean, to help you out. And then also just to reiterate what Lee was saying, you know, as regards with schools these days, you know, I mean, even I've had a message from one of our junior players, from the parents asking me would I go into the school and just do some one-to-one sessions with their son, because they're getting nothing from PE now at the moment. They're just left it to the side. And she wants to kind of like give him something to further his, you know, his basketball career, plus also give him, you know, something to do while at school instead of just sitting there watching all the other kids joining in. So I think the schools and, you know, these whoever they are, these are officers who go into schools and promote the sport, need to do a lot more, pointing them to local clubs, you know, different sports, you know, either dancing or boxing or tennis or whatever, but just give them something for the kids to, you know what I mean, to do.
That's interesting you say that. And Patrick, you were going to say something as well.
Yeah, all I was going to say was that we've had a situation of that where an SEN school had to decide to stop physical activity. So they were running a dance class and they were running a sports program. They were doing physical fitness, and they had to stop it because the school had to do GCSE English, and they couldn't afford to pay for the sport and physical activity alongside doing the GCSE program. But the problem was, as even the teachers were saying, at the end of the day, there is no point in this particular group of individuals teaching them English, because they're not going to use the skills and knowledges in that. Whereas learning to dance, learning to do gym, physical fitness, eye hand coordination, all that sort of benefits and good things that you get from physical activity and sport were being thrown out the window because they got a D or an E in English literature. And I'm not against GCSEs or people doing GCSEs, but I think Tom's right and Lee's right. There's got to be some practicalities behind what is being offered for skills and abilities with children in SEN schools. And coming back to the point regarding the shared knowledge is such an important one with quite a few people that come to dance classes. It is just that point of, as in basketball and boxing, it's that couples or team or group working is so important for that confidence building and engagement. In for example, like Katie, when I first met Katie, she wouldn't say boo to a goose, and now she's on this panel giving me what for on bits and pieces. But that for me is the whole point, is that we should be, as partners, as providers of sport, of physical activity, be in a position of actually being able to engage confidently and engage people to build their own systems and programs. But I think Andy, Tom, Lee, as providers of the sports, we're probably sitting there most of the time trying to do the paperwork and just trying to keep the roof over our heads, let alone actually getting stuff done on the grassroots level at this point. So I think sometimes there needs to be a rethink of that connection with school and also the actual practical benefits of sport physical activity. Sorry, rant over.
That's all right, Patrick. That's okay.
Can I just jump in, Andy?
Sorry, Tom.
I'm just going on to what Patrick's points now. I'm just going to ask Patrick, don't you think that the...
We've lost you, Tom. You're muted.
Sorry. Don't you think, Patrick, though, you know what I mean, with these schools, the only time they ever come to you looking for you to do any sessions is when they want something, you know what I mean? If they've got some, got to tick some box, or, you know what I mean, they've got some kind of like a new whatever fad it is going on, or, you know, like say the Commonwealth Games is coming up. Oh yeah, we'll get the kids playing sport because the Commonwealth Games is coming up. And as soon as that's gone, that's it, just dies a death then. And then you're chasing them, trying to, you know, get back in there.
The amount of groups I've spoken to that we work with who have that exact same problem, that they're able to get a stream of funds for a project for 12 weeks or for delivery, and then the funding just dries up and they're expected to carry running on their own, and then they come to us as a governing body, as probably Andy, like yourself. You sit there and go, I most people think a national governing body's got a lot of money, and we sit there and go, we're just as cash-strapped as you are at this point in time. Yes, there are bigger bodies that have large sums of money that go forward with it, but the majority group of NGBs are cash-strapped and are just in the same boat as the local groups. It's just we're trying to look at a wider strategic picture than just one group in a particular area. And I think sometimes people forget that.
It's interesting you go on about that, and we talk about schools, but obviously if you think about, as again we've transitioned and moving into adulthood, and then obviously that support stops, and then it becomes a case of, well, you've turned 18 now, and you've got to, if you're going to university, you've got to get your care package, you've got to sort out your support. Oh, if you want this extra 30 hours plus care package, you've got to pay for this. And then it all becomes, as you say, I think, Roxanne, is about, you look at the doing sport, but you worry about them, well, if they see me doing this, is my benefit, or is my PIP or my DWP going to stop? Because, as they say, I'm actually being really active, and that can be seen as detrimental to me having disability, but even though it doesn't define who I am. What would you say to, obviously, people now who've transitioned out into adulthood, moved into the community, thinking about, taking up sport, and then worried about what the implications could be and impact on them?
Me, sorry. I wasn't sure if you were picking it out generally or me.
It's an open floor, so anybody can chip in at any time. So if you want to carry on, that's fine.
I would definitely say always ask, always inquire. That is always my golden rule when I do any inclusion specialist work. It's always ask, because I think people are too scared to ask, just in case asking that question gets rid of anything or puts them in danger of losing anything. Because actually there are people out there that want to help you, such as obviously Chronic Warriors and Paradance, that will be able to support that and support you if you have any issues. I think don't be afraid to ask for what you want, and find the people out there. Put that message out there, shout it. Someone will find you.
Thanks, Roxanne. Anybody else want to chip in on that one? It's an open floor, guys. Patrick, I'll pick on you.
Thanks. I think I would say that it's a real hard one, because in one respect, you look at all three of the two sports, boxing, wheelchair basketball, dance, and most people wouldn't put those three together in a mixing bowl. They literally, if you were to say, well, what would go together, what wouldn't, they put these as further apart. But when you strip it down to the bare bones, I think that's the idea, is that it's trying something new, it's trying something different. We were in this motivational project, linked in with dancers that want to try boxing, boxers that want to try dance, boxers that want to try basketball, basketballers that want to try dance. So there's already that interconnection. So I think for me, someone that's taking Roxanne's point, it's someone that wants to try something, try it. Yes, there's always going to be the people that turn around and go, oh, she can get out of a wheelchair and she can walk, or oh, they've got their arm and they can do this. And at the end of the day, do what you want to do and do what makes you happy, because at the end of the day, we've got enough to be fighting, and we've got enough barriers as disabled individuals. So from my concept, to hell with it, go for it. What's the worst that can happen?
Thanks, Patrick. Anybody else?
Can I chip in, please?
Of course you can, Katie.
So I was just thinking, and I agree with Paddy wholeheartedly, because I think, yes, obviously, ticking all the right boxes in terms of your entitlements and benefits is important. Yes, of course that is. But you've got to live your life, and you only have one life. You can't, I do worry about it. Don't get me wrong. I do worry about that side of my life all the time, maybe too much.
I was
But,
going to say, you're not alone.
but then I think to myself, come on, Kate, you have to live your life. You've only got one life. And they'll make their decision. And let's hope you tick the right boxes. And they have to look at those cases on an individual basis. And I don't think doing a sport is detrimental to that. You know, does that make sense?
It does. Thanks, Katie. That's really a great input, and I think that's, you know, true words in what you're saying. And anybody else? Lee, Amy, Tom?
I think there's misconceptions from people outside that think you're getting something for nothing. You're getting money for no reason, and then oh, they're doing a sport, so why they're getting money? That, you know, you're in a wheelchair, you should be sat at home, watching daytime TV. You know, you're getting your money. The minute you go out and do something that's physical, what do you need that money for? Then that they don't understand the reasoning behind why you're getting that money. And I think even with applying for things like PIP and that, it doesn't include any question or anything that is related to that at all. But people outside think you're getting something for nothing, and that's the misconception.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Lee.
got something to add, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go on, Katie.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, you know, people are going to think what they want to think. And I'm not a selfish person, but I realise that in some aspects of life, you do have to be selfish and say, I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to enjoy para dance and enjoy dance for me. They'll think what they want to think, and that goes for society. And those people that, you know, do the benefit checks and everything else, at the end of the day, they'll think what they want to think. But we shouldn't be defined by that side of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Amy, do you agree?
Say again, sorry, who said my name?
I thought you were going to say something there, Amy.
I'm just like nodding my head along with everything everybody said so far, and it's you know, I could sit and agree and add bits to what everybody said, but it's why should we feel like we just have to exist and stay within a closed door environment? We have as much right as human beings to be out in society and doing stuff. And Lee sort of saying, you know, with regard to the benefits and something for nothing, and you'll always get the one saying, well, it's my tax payments, you know, I pay for your benefits. You shouldn't have a nice TV or a nice home to live in, or you shouldn't be going on holidays. You should just be in that little box kind of thing. And it's just, it's really, really sad. But yeah, go out, like Patrick said, go out and live your life. If you want to go and try dancing or boxing or basketball or all three, if you've really got the energy to do that in a week, crack on, give it a go. You might love all three. You might decide they're not for you. Give it a go. You've got absolutely nothing to lose. Nothing at all.
Thanks, Amy. Moving on, obviously, to a question. Our next question, and thinking about, obviously, what everybody said. So in that case, then, why is inclusion and diversity so important? I'm so horrible. Yes, Roxanne.
If you supply an inclusive environment, the diversity will follow, and with diversity comes strength and possibility for growth and ideas, and obviously a sense of belonging. And if we talk about diversity from an intersectional point of view, so not just disability, we can provide a greater sense of belonging.
Thanks, Roxanne. Anybody else? Come on, Patrick. Come on, Katie.
I've got something to say if you don't mind. Sorry. I do these Zoom meetings with Paddy all the time and I'm always butting in. So I'm being extra careful today not to butt in. So yeah, I agree with Roxanne, and I think to show diversity, to have more wheelchair dance groups, boxing groups, basketball groups is a good thing, because, and other sports, obviously, the more we're out there and the more we're showing people, not just on a sports level, but on a personal level too, other disabled people, able-bodied people, I think it's a mutual, lesson to say everybody's different, but everybody's got something to offer in the world. We're just as valid as the next person. Nobody's higher or lower than the next person. Although as a disabled person, and I don't know if the other people agree, but sometimes society as a whole makes you feel like you're lower down in the, what am I trying to say? Lower down in the pecking order, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Less valuable.
Yeah.
But we've got just as much right to be part of society, the world, as everybody else.
Absolutely. I think that's a great positive words what you're saying, Katie, to be fair. And I think, Patrick, Tom, Lee, Amy, Roxanne would agree with that, and I agree with that too, because it's all about, that passion and positivity, and and we're all able to do that in the community and show that awareness to others, and it is about education, training and supporting each other. Thinking about how does that form then, and obviously playing inclusion sport, but how does that develop even more opportunities for people with disabilities in the community?
I think, go on.
Go. Please go.
No, I was just going to say, I think the more that we can get the message out there, it's raising the profile of the clubs, of the sports, of whatever it is that people are offering, and I'm struggling for the words. I think, so touched upon, so it raises the profile of the clubs. It promotes that brand, that positive image that, the media get involved, everybody wants to know what's going on, kind of thing. And social media now, it's just monumental. And it doesn't take a lot to sort of to get onto those social media platforms, and Facebook leads into Twitter, leads into Instagram, and God knows what else. I'm not on all of them, but some of them. And I think the inclusion, it promotes a consistency in that anybody can talk the talk, and we do this and we do that, and it kind of touches a little bit upon what Patrick and Tom were saying around the Commonwealth Games are coming, so the schools are going to reach out to the club saying, right, let's get you in, we'll be seen to be doing our bit, and that's talk the talk, but actually can you, and I use this term very, very loosely because of the audience that are here, but can you walk the walk? Yeah. You're talking about it and you're making all the right noises, but the proof is in the pudding. Are you actually doing all of this? Are you actually an inclusion sports environment kind of thing? And obviously as the message gets out, your memberships grow, and then the sponsorship opportunities, volunteering, lots of things like that from a club perspective. So there you go. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I totally agree with you, Amy. I think at the moment we are at a very difficult tipping point. Mm-hmm. In that we've come out of, we're moving forward from COVID in whatever way, shape or form we're looking at. And I think everyone so far, this hotspot approach around the LGBTQI, the women, elderly, race, and it comes back to Roxanne's point as well, that intersectionality. We're not seeing intersectionality. What we're seeing is segregation. And what we're seeing also is we are on this very tight rope on that if we don't start looking at inclusivity and diversity and that hybrid model of opportunity of offering online versus face-to-face, the model that people are going to come out in their own time, all of these types of questions that are now coming up, post-COVID, I won't say complete post-COVID, but post-COVID, we could end up in a very big situation of something like Katie said, of where we do have people that still feel with pre-COVID, where they were in the lower pecking order, are going to feel even more down in the pecking order. And if we as suppliers, as athletes, as participants, as deliverers, don't start really talking to one another and doing that promotion, doing that engagement, it's going to backfire on us really, really badly. And we're going to have a number of people who pre-COVID are going to be even worse off because they won't engage.
I'm going to throw a devil's advocate in there, Patrick, because obviously we talk about, this is grassroots inclusion sports and we talk about inclusion and diversity, but do you feel that organisations, not saying all national governing bodies, however, do you feel that higher up organisations, when they're looking about community and grassroots, they sometimes forget about inclusion and diversity?
I think, like anything, when you strategize, you go with where the money is and where the priorities come through, and then from that you build back in. I would never deem to say that any organisation would deliberately exclude a particular audience. I'll get you back for that later. But I do think that there is a mentality and you follow the money. And sadly, in inclusivity and diversity, there is a lot of money, but it depends on which one's at the top. So, not being funny, at the moment, there is a lot around the racial community and the Black Lives Matter and all the other connections around that. And we've also just recently, last month, had Pride Month. So there's a lot now around the LGBTQIA community. So from that basis, it does, in some respects, who's in front and who wants the government's agenda at that time. So I think there is some more communication to be done. And I'd love to know what everyone else thinks on that basis, because as a body, we're always shifting the pieces to try and make sure we are covering everybody, and you don't always make it right, and it sometimes does go wrong.
So sorry.
No, it's fine.
Sorry. Oh, Louise is never going to let me come back again now. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Patrick, just coming off the Pride point of view, because yes, June was Pride Month, but actually July is Disability Pride Month. And what you'll see is, yes, there are some companies that have gone on the bandwagon and tried to deal with it, but actually it's not really comparatively transcending our community. It's not becoming the wide such as Pride. I'm probably explaining that really badly. I know exactly what I mean. So yes, I think it's all about what's sexy, what's hot topic, what sells. And disability always seems to be on the agenda somewhere, but never quite tagged in on a date or time. And back to the, initial question about the diversity and inclusion, I think a lot of these governing bodies think they do diversity inclusion because they do like touch on points, or again they look at certain elements, but it's not true diversity and inclusion.
Thanks, Roxanne. Anybody else would like to chip on that one?
No, I agree with everything that's been said, and do you know what, sort of listening as sort of people on about governing bodies and things like that, and just it popped into my head, and it's always something that seems to crop up every 4 years, is the Olympic versus Paralympic coverage. Something as broad, as wide, as huge as that on a global platform. The BBC typically, and God knows what other channels and outlets, will run endless coverage about the Olympics, but the Paralympics, much like this year, it's confined to Channel 4, and it will be X amount of hours coverage they'll provide, nowhere near the amount of coverage that the Olympics get. And it's that money side, what's going to draw people in.
Yeah, and Channel 4 are doing a big push at the moment by saying most of the presenters will be disabled, not actually highlighting where you can watch it, why we should be doing it, or giving it airtime. But don't worry, we've got some people in wheelchairs. That's how it feels.
Yeah, no, and that's
Roxanne, you can come again.
We're going to screen.
We'll definitely have you back on the panel discussion, Roxanne. I'm definitely number one.
So,
Yeah, you're amazing, Roxanne.
Oh, thank you. I under the table here.
No, but I agree with everything you say. I think networks, if that's the right word, TV channels are like, okay, we need to tick this box. So we need a percentage of programming aimed or discussions about disability or anything different, really. And as long as they tick that box, it can be on at 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
Because it might offend people. So it's got to be on late at night because it just might offend people. And they might get too many complaints because that presenter is an amputee, or that presenter shakes because she's got CP and she shakes, or whatever, and they put it on late at night because they don't want to seem to offend.
Yeah, I think you're right, Katie. And they might get complaints and you've screened this and you've put it on, but equally you're going to get other people that complain with, great that you've done it, but why have you put it on when you've got minimal viewers going to be tuning in for it? Well, it's okay, we tick that box and actually we've done it.
Exactly.
So we've done our part and represented the disabled community. It doesn't matter if next to nobody's seen it, but we've done this episode kind of thing.
I think that's what it absolutely astounds me, and especially in the streaming world where we have apps and stuff, that you don't see more of that kind of amplification because it's there, it's possible. But then it also goes into the algorithm argument because we all design our own algorithms. So if we don't want to be in that algorithm, it's never going to reach us. So to a disabled community, it might even look like there is a wider awareness of disability, but actually past our algorithm, there's not. Sorry to go off on one, but yeah.
But I think it's quite interesting when you look at it. Even you take those two big events, the Commonwealth Games, the Paralympic Games, but then compare that to the dance side of on TV and programs is the Strictly. And it was only, I think, about last year. So Strictly as a international national TV program has been going for 12 years, 13 years, however long. And it was only last year or the year before they actually had disabled dancers in the show. So I think there is a misconception at professional level, whether that be at dance or whether that be professional athletes. There is that misconception of advertisement and a platform for people to inspire. And I think problem is coming back to our grassroots conversation, is sometimes the way it is put across is wrong. It is put across, isn't it inspirational? They got some wheelchair users to dance around on this, or don't look at those basketball players bouncing a ball. Aren't they really great? And I think sometimes it's actually, no, aren't they brilliant basketball players? They've just won the cup, or they've just done that, or isn't that dancer brilliant? They've done a 3-minute routine and are now an international champion. Sometimes it's the way the programs put it across causes the problem as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think having something like we're having with a panel discussion and giving people the chance to have a voice and talk about these things is really important. And thinking about obviously society as a general, and you think about wheelchair basketball. I mean, not everybody realises that GB senior men are world champions, and when people look at really, and because they don't they don't realise that the sport that we're probably best in the world, and they haven't heard of it. How can we be world champions? It is a misconception of people don't understand disability in the community. Guys, thank you so much for all the positivity. Before we finish, and Patrick knows this, don't you, Patrick? All right. I always finish with a question that part of my motivation inspiration interviews, and I think it's really poignant for us and positivity wise to support that with our panel discussion. So going through from everybody, thinking about a quote that represents inclusion and diversity, but also motivation and inspiration. Starting with Lee, what would your quote be and why?
Oh, that's putting someone on the spot, isn't
It
it?
is, isn't
Oh,
it?
that's cool. That's cool.
Well, probably on the lines of, you know, you've got to give it a try to see whether you like it, really, and that'd be the reason why. Is, you know, if you get the opportunity to try a sport, or whether it's, you know, dancing, boxing, any other sport, is go and give it a try and see whether you like it.
Thanks, Lee. Katie.
You've got me thinking there, Andy. I've got so much to say, but my quote would be, "You are good enough," and we are good enough, and just go and show people what you can do.
Thanks, Katie. That's lovely. Amy.
You know what? I'm torn between two. One of them, I'm sort of. I've
Can I have your other one?
I'll say again.
Can I have your other one then?
yeah. I'll go with the one. So the one I'm thinking of, and it's a cliche, and it's from a shampoo advert, is "You're worth it." And it's not just around sport. It's you're worth being here. You're worth, you know, more than existing. It's just, I can't explain it, and I can't explain why, but you're worth it. Everybody has a worth, and sometimes people just, I think, need the reminder, you are worth it. Whatever it is that you want to do, you're umming and ahhing about doing, you're not sure whether to do, and you need a little bit of a nudge kind of thing. It's just, you are worth it, whatever it is, how big or how small, whether it's putting your socks on for the first time, or going and trying a new sport, or going to the shop. It's something might be small to you, but it is massive to somebody else. You are worth it. Just yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Go on then, Tom. You can have Amy's second one.
It was Carpe Diem.
Well, mine would be the tagline that we have at the Bears Wheelchair Basketball Club, which is "Attitude is everything," which means that, you know, if you've got the attitude, you know, you can do anything you want to. So, you know, if little plug here, if you haven't seen our video on our, you know, I mean, that we made, have a look on our page, and you'll see the video we made. But we made that video.
Thanks, Tom.
But we made that video to inspire people, so that
absolutely, and you know, and it's worth every plug, and you know, and that's about promoting inclusion sport, grassroots sport, and promoting everybody's sport, whether, you know, whatever that be, because everybody should have the opportunity to play that sport. Roxanne, I'm looking forward to this one.
Okay. Don't think that you have to be stood up to be counted. It doesn't mean that you have to sit down and take it. That was really bad. I had it in my head and you threw me off.
No, don't like that one.
But, thanks, Roxanne. Patrick.
I'm gonna have that on a t-shirt.
I think mine was, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I think there's a lot of times that we fool ourselves to believe we're not able to do anything, and that we listen to society. And I think for me, that sums it up. I'm no longer going to be a fool. They are. They're going to listen to what I need to have to say, and they're going to take part in it.
I love it, Patrick. Well, I'm going to finish on with a cliche, because
as always,
because obviously it's about a nation as a whole and about globally, but I'm going to go with "It's Coming Home." And the reason I say that, it's because everybody has the opportunity to play sport, and everybody can go along and play sport, but obviously bringing it home with you means you belong to the sport that you play. So it's coming home, and I'll see you Sunday. Guys, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for being our panel discussion number 2 on our project inclusion with Wheelchair Boxing Chronic Warriors, Patrick McGee from Paradance UK, and Katie, Lee, Amy, Tom from Warwickshire Bears Wheelchair Basketball. Roxanne, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. This is Project Inclusion.
Well done, Andy, for being the host.
I'm Andy Clapburn, Wheelchair Basketball. You know, I thank you so much, guys. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I hope to invite you again to our next panel discussion, because hopefully we should have Semble and Carlin all about socialising and accessibility and logistics about, you know, going off to do your sport. But obviously, everybody's entitled to go out for a drink and get absolutely plastered. I didn't say that, sorry. You're entitled to go out and have a drink and enjoy yourself like everybody else in the community. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and I'll see everybody soon. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Hey guys.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.